we are live now. So we'll introduce ourselves and then you can introduce yourself and we'll give us what you want us to know about ranked choice voting in Burlington and how it's gone. You are our guinea pig witness. So, so I'm Senator Ruth Hardy from the Addison District.
And Olivia Parker, committee assistant.
And this is in this chair is Senator Tanya Vyhovsky. She is moving her car. She should be with us momentarily.
Rebecca White, Windsor County.
Bob Norris, Franklin County.
Dan Watson, Washington County.
Allison Clarkson, Windsor County District.
All right, so that's us. Why don't you introduce yourself and take it away?
Right. Thank you. I'm Sarah Montgomery, the Assistant City Clerk in Burlington, Vermont.
Excellent. And our understanding is that you just ran a ranked choice voting election for a special election and are about to run another one for your city, your upcoming town meeting day elections. So we'd just like to hear from you how it went and what lessons you learned and any feedback you would have on the bill before us.
Sure. So we did just run our first ranked choice election in some time. We had one in 2006 and 2009 for mayor, but this was our first for city councilors in December. We had to kind of have the surprise election based on a city councilor resigning before their term was over. So it was a little bit unexpected for us to have to implement the ranked choice voting this soon. We were expecting our first go at it to be in March, which we'll be doing again on a little bit of a larger scale. So we started seriously thinking about this and planning for it in May, and then kind of working with the vendor for next steps. We thought about what their machines can do, and then what we needed to have set in ordinance in order for us to have the rules set in order to run a ranked choice election. So that went forward to our ordinance committee to create the rules. And based on that, we were able to do a mock election. So the tabulator vendor, LHS, had us fill out 100 ballots, and we did a hand count on those and then ran them through the tabulators just to make sure that everything that we thought was going to happen with the counting actually happened. So that was a really good way to learn a little bit more about how the tabulation was happening by actually doing that hand count with the ballots as well. And then from there, we were able to program our tabulators, and we did do ranked choice for the December. Our ballots were ranked choice. We had this single city councilor on them. It was a district seat, so it spanned across 2 of our wards. So we had 2 separate tabulators, and then when we did the tabulation, we brought those tabulators and memory cards back to our centralized location at City Hall and pulled them together for the tabulation. For that race, it did end up being a 50% majority, so we didn't need to go to the RCV tabulation. We chose to run it because we had the resources and support at that time, and we wanted to kind of be able to test it out before our larger election in March. So we did, it went fine on the tabulation, and we were able to get the results. I shared the unofficial results from that election, showing how it kind of broke it down by rounds. So you can see that there. We did have, speaking to one of our ward clerks who is the presiding officer of one of our polling places, she said there was some questions from voters asking why we were doing ranked choice voting, and if they could only vote for one candidate seemed to be one of the most common questions. So I think for the most part, people understood it. For that election, the majority of our ballots were submitted absentee. We had about 1,100 ballots cast, and around 800 of those were submitted absentee. So the polling place participation was pretty low to hear that in-person feedback from voters, but we weren't receiving a ton of calls in our office asking questions about it. So I think for the most part, it was pretty intuitive for the voters to understand. And we did see, sorry, a long rant.
No, I just want to note for the committee members that there are 4 documents on our page: a sample ballot, the ordinance, a ranked choice voter education handout, and the unofficial results. So if you want to look at those as Sarah's talking, that's works. And Senator Clarkson has a question right now before you go on.
So I'm just curious because you mentioned in your preamble that you already were doing it for mayor and one other race, right? RCV?
Not recently. I wasn't involved in this. It was in 2006 and 2009. The city had adopted RCV for mayoral elections, but that got pulled back. Those were the only 2 elections that happened.
And then the voters rescinded it?
Mhm.
Okay.
So
And-
all,
Okay,
sorry.
I guess the other question I'd ask is, how much did you spend, and you could get this to us, how much did you spend on voter education? Did you do ads? Did you do public, what do we call them?
Service announcements.
Public service announcements, and did you do stuff like that in addition to a handout?
Yeah, so for this election, it was kind of sneaking up on us right in the wake of the general election. So we didn't do very much voter education. We had the handout available on our website and at the polling places. We had that in the polling booths for people to refer to as they were voting. And we kind of just asked our ward clerks, which are the people who kind of run each ward, to share it with the constituents as they're able to. So we didn't do a whole ton. So there wasn't a lot of costs involved there. This time around, we're doing a little bit more. We're including that handout, the voter education handout, with every ballot that we're mailing. And we do mail ballots to all of our actively registered voters. So that has a little bit wider of a stretch. And then we're kind of doing some posts on Front Porch Forum and having our counselors kind of spread the word as well. But we're not doing any huge scale voter education.
Thanks.
Are you doing any exit polling or anything like that to so that you might have data to share about what people thought of it?
We aren't specifically. I know VPIRG was doing some. I think they had people at our polling places for the December election, and they got some of that data.
Okay. Why don't you carry on with what you were going to say before we interrupted you?
Oh, no problem. I was just going to say the part about voters kind of questioning if they had to do one ranking. I didn't share this document with you all, but we can see from our tabulator tapes that 78% of our voters for this election had gone on to make a second choice ranking, and then 57 went on even further to make the third choice, with only 6% making a fourth choice, because we only had 3 candidates. So in order to make a fourth choice, they're factoring in a write-in there. So it does seem like, looking at that data, people understood how to move forward with the rankings. It's completely optional to do subsequent rankings, but I think people who wanted to knew how to.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, or was that it?
I can share kind of a few of the sticking points that made it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
One of the things is we're really reliant, and I think members of the public and media like to look at our tabulator tapes. Our tabulator tape is a very limited usefulness with ranked choice voting, because it can be broken out to see how many votes each candidate got in each ranking on the ballots, but it doesn't take into factor like which candidates getting eliminated. So which of those second choice rankings are actually being counted once a candidate gets eliminated. So I think that piece of it can be confusing for people. So I don't have a solution, but just a note there.
The actual tabulator tape that people ask for is not a good way of looking at who wins anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a great measure. You can kind of get an idea if you're looking at just the first choice rankings. If there's a majority, it's clear by the tabulator tape still, but beyond that, it's the software that's really doing the tabulation and ranked choice.
Got it. Okay. Senator Watson.
That was my question, actually.
Oh, wow.
Just answered it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Good.
Senator Norris.
So I'm a little confused. I'm not quite sure. I'm following everything here. Sarah, you said you ran the ranked choice voting in 2006, 2009, and then even more recently here, correct?
Yeah, yep. So the city had ranked choice back then.
Is this something we pick and choose for certain elections or certain positions? It doesn't go statewide for everything. I know we're looking at the presidential thing here,
Yeah.
but using Burlington as it, for instance, Sarah, you don't use this ranked choice voting for all of your elections, period?
No, our charter change allowed for city council elections only. for ranked choice. The rest are by plurality. So that's something we're looking at in March. We're going to have both plurality and ranked choice on our ballot.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, so in 2006 and 2009, there had been a charter change in Burlington to allow for it for the mayor's race only, I believe. And they used it for 2 elections in Burlington, and then the voters rescinded that charter change. So then they didn't use it for, from 2009 up until 2022. But then in 2021, the voters voted to have a charter change, and we approved it last session. So this fall, the first time was to be for this coming town meeting day election, to be used for city council races in Burlington only. But they had to use it early because they had a special election because somebody resigned from city council. So I mean, I sort of see it as you did a kind of pilot project as well with, how would it work for city council elections?
So I have other questions, but they don't necessarily pertain to Burlington, so I'll just hold off on those.
Okay,
until we
yeah,
get
that's-
different discussions.
That sounds great, but that was that accurate, Sarah, what I just said?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not a pick and choose kind of thing. It was just the voters changed their mind, or different voters. Senator Biehoski, did you have a question or comment? Okay. Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I mean, or do you have any feedback specifically on the bill or any of the language in the bill based on the experiences you've had in Burlington?
I think the one other challenge that we're facing, and I think this would probably be amplified on the state level, is dealing with write-ins after the fact. In order to get write-in candidates to go through the RCV tabulation, we need to adjudicate all of those names in the software. So that takes going through all of the images of the ballots and designating names to the write-ins. So it's just a really time-consuming process. And I think we already do a lot of work after state elections to get those write-ins to the state as clerks. And I think doing that for 4 different rankings on each position, and then the work that the state would have to do after, I think that's just something to consider, because even with a single race for a city, it took us a couple of hours to go through that adjudication process. So it's
And would you might, it may be too early, but have suggestions for how to make that easier?
I'm not sure exactly. I don't know if I think in general, there's ways to streamline write-ins if there were candidates had to declare that they wanted to be a write-in candidate, but just having to list out every single name is it's really time consuming. I think there have been some cities that have changed their charter to allow to not have to list out those write-ins specifically. I don't know if there's a way to streamline that so that information wouldn't all need to be inputted, because ultimately, if we get less write-ins total than the lowest vote getting candidate, those write-ins are all going to get eliminated immediately in our CV anyway.
Okay, well, that's something we can continue to ask people about as we do more. So the tabulator, the write-ins, and what other challenges or things that we should think about do you have on your list?
The only other thing specifically is just kind of touching base with LHS, who is our tabulator vendor. I noticed just one thing in the bill where it says that if one skipped ranking happens, they'll go forward, but if more than one is, they wouldn't. And that's just something that we discovered that the software from Dominion isn't able to do. It either can skip rankings, period, or it cannot skip rankings. So you can't tell the software, like, we'll accept one skipped ranking, but not multiple. So I think just connecting with the vendor on some of those specifics of what the technology can do would be helpful as well.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure I followed that. Could you explain that one more time? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, apologize.
So for skipped rankings, it's set in the bill that one skipped ranking would be accepted and that they would move forward any subsequent rankings if just one ranking was skipped. Whereas the software can only say like that skipped rankings are allowed or aren't allowed. So basically, if a voter ranks number 1 but doesn't vote rank 2 or 3, but ranks 4, you could either say, I want 4 to move forward to their number 2, or you can say, we're not going to count 4 at all. But you can't say, you can't have like that conditional if it's only 1 skip versus multiple skips.
Got you. Okay.
Do you, I'm actually trying to go through, do you know where in the bill that is, the thing about skips, so I can note it?
Yeah, I haven't even picked up on the skip piece.
This is on page 3 under line 6. I don't know if that.
Page 3. Oh, that is the definition of skipped ranking,
Okay.
and then,
That's a start.
yeah,
Ooh, quorum column.
I think it's just the ethics panel.
On page 10,
page 10,
line 3.
line 3. Okay. Good job, Senator North.
Fun.
Cruising through
Total
there.
number of ballots that become inactive in each round are not going to be inactive, be sure, or reach 2 consecutive skip rankings recorded as separate. Okay. I will note this as something that we need to get more explore. Yes, exactly.
Highlight.
Okay. And anything else?
I didn't look through it all super thoroughly. That was just kind of the one thing that popped out at me, but
Okay.
just keeping in mind that there are restrictions with the software.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's got it. It's really the software that's the challenge.
Yeah. So, it, you know, it will, you obviously have another election coming up, which is a bigger, you know, more candidates, more races for city council, and it's only the city council. And then you have a ballot initiative about expanding ranked choice voting as well.
We do.
And so we'll obviously be watching closely to see what happens and may want to have you back in. I know you'll be super busy right after town meeting day, but maybe the following week when we come back. But if there are other things that you think of or encounter as you're leading up to the election, oh, you just froze. Are you still there, Sarah? Okay.
I'm here.
Now you're moving. Then please let us know. And if you have suggestions as you look at the bill more, or if you have a chance, please let us know, especially with this sort of prep work that is necessary. It sounds like you actually didn't have to do too much prep work. You did how did you run the mock election? Like, how did that work?
So that was just the vendor sent us a bunch of ballots. We filled them out and we did a hand count with them.
Oh, so like who's we? Who your clerk staff?
Yeah, our clerk staff. And then we sent the ballots back to LHS and they actually tabulated them. And then we just wanted to see if our results from our hand count matched their tabulation count.
I see. Okay, so it wasn't a mock election with like real voters. It was a
No.
mock election with, okay.
Just ballots, yeah.
Okay.
Under 20.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we'll be in touch, and if you think of anything else, you can certainly reach out to us and let us know. Thank you for your time today and
Sure.
for all of your work. We'll probably see you again at some point soon.
Sounds good. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
All right, Senator North, since you're up, will you find a secretary? Thank you. She's hanging out there somewhere.
I have a legislative council.
Okay. Okay, we'll have to that.
Well, I feel like that was very.
They should get an answer.
So I mean, how like works well is.
Go.
I'm doing it. I'm sending an email right now.
I just find sometimes that is awesome.
Big vision. Yeah, that's hilarious.